Hi guys, welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. And today I'm going to be reviewing Boosh, Sailing to Sarantium by Guy Gavriel Kay, or, to those familiar with him, GGK. So this will be my first review. It's been over a year. It has been over a year since I've posted a bloody book review. I don't know why that is, mostly because I have difficulty filming anything now. There's a barrier between things that I think and the ability to sit down and actually produce those thoughts. So, so this might be a mess, but we're going to try it anyway. Also, if you can hear sounds in the background, there are two tiny children being bathed. They're mine. It would be weird if not. In the other room. Like, my office where I film this is right there. No, my office is here. The bathroom's right there. My wife's bathing our kids. So if you hear bum, 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 or whatever, that would be why. So, let's go ahead and give this a shot. Without wasting any more time. Let's get down to business. Let's talk about Sailing to Sarantium. So, I am reading this. I've only read one other Guy Gavriel Kay book, because we're not that tight, so I can't say GGK. Before this, and it was Tigana, and that was several years ago. I actually, back during the halcyon days of the Shelf Space Book Club, Tigana was one of the books that a bunch of people were reading, I was told to read. Somehow, I was supposed to read it. And it was the very first book that I did not finish that I said I was going to read since being on book 2. And that lasted for like a year or something and change. And anyway, so then I listened to the audio up to where I got to and then finally finished it. And that was several years ago. I think Tigana was on my best of... No, I forgot to put it on my best of like 2022 reads or something like that. 2023 reads? I don't bloody know at this point. Anyway, I loved Tigana for the most part. There are 2 sexy time scenes only in that book. And they are both unnecessary and much more graphic than the situation even calls for. But other than that, I loved the mythical quality of Kay's prose and what he has to say about memory and identity. And I thought it was a beautiful, beautiful novel that had me misting up toward the end. So that is the experience I have going into this. Now, I know many people who love Guy Gavriel Kay. Josh from Red Fairy Books loves GGK. Mindolin from my Discord has and current Jeopardy champion is his new favorite author. He has read all of the books and has ranked them. He ranks Sailing of Sarantium and I think like 4th or 5th or something like that. And Jake Bishop, of course, is the OG Guy Gavriel Kay superfan who has also read all of his books and done a tier ranking, rated. He rated all of them. The videos are here. I'll link them for you here, Jake, if I go back and find them. So, I don't have a ton of experience, and oh, man, what a preamble! So, I am reading this because Philip was convinced to do a Guy Gavriel Kay read-along, reading all of his bibliography in a year, which is weird considering how little time Philip has to hang around with us plebeians and read things like that. But Evan over at is it Nerdwriter 1? I guess he convinced Philip to read all of these, which is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about that. And so yeah, Philip was like, "Hey, I'm doing this Guy Gavriel Kay read along. You want an in on any of these books?" And, like, the first 4 I tossed in, Philip's like, "Oh, well, we're already full for that, and, sorry." And so all that was left was Sarantium and Lord of Emperors, and even then, I had to beg to get on it. He had, like, 6 people in front of me, but after a bunch of begging and bribery, I was allowed on the panel to discuss things with preeminent sages like himself, Evan, and, of course, Kyle. So that is why I'm reading this, because I never have any room for anything. I'm so behind on my own read-alongs, which are ones that that other people don't read. So that's how I ended up reading this, even though I'm so behind on my own read-alongs. And I guess now I should say, without wasting any more time, because I wasted a whole bunch of time in preamble. So let's roll it again, without wasting any more time. Let's get down to business. Let's talk about Sailing to Sarantium. So, Guy Gavriel Kay writes historical fantasy, not historical fiction. And Tigana is low-key basically Italian city-states at war, so like the Italian wars and stuff like that. Um, and then Lyons Valrason is Spain. This is all from things that I hear. This, like, I don't know if his other books are better shielded or like better veiled. This is 100% Byzantium slash pre-Constantinople. No, this is Constantinople. It's not even flipping Byzantium at this time. It would be Constantinople because it's past 300 and whatever. Theoretically, this is based on Yeats's poems sailing to Byzantium and just Byzantium. And it is just like almost one for many of the things going on. The prologue, which is 50 pages, talks about the rise of Valerius I, who is very obviously the Emperor Justin. And then chapter 1, Justin ruled for like 12 years, but who cares? Chapter 1, Valerius II has been crowned. And that is Justin I's nephew who helped him rise to power. And this is Justinian. Justinian I, the emperor, and his wife Theodora, who began as an actress slash prostitute. In this, her name, what is her name in this? Alexana is the empress, and she is the Theodora stand-in. And I don't know how I feel about part of this, because Alexana, who is supposed to be Theodora, but is not Theodora, obviously, because these aren't real people, and yet she says a line, word for word, a quote that Empress Theodora says during the what are called the Nika riots or the Victory riots in this. Anyway, it is all very obviously heavily inspired and leaned on actual events, at least as far as Constantinople or Byzantium, and the chariot factions, the blues and the greens, the Nika riots, Justinian and Theodora, the Hagia Sophia, and its marvelous dome. All of that is just like, let's just change the names. Let's just change the names. And we can start there. So, the Sarantian Empire is the eastern king or empire that has taken preeminence from the West, which fell like 50 years ago, less than 100 years ago. The Western Rhodian Empire fell, and Rhodius is the old capital of the Western Empire. Back when the two were, one empire, just west, the capital in the west, and the capital in the east, just like, so Rhodius is very clearly Rome and the Roman Empire, and the Antai, we begin in Italy, which is, I don't know what the Italy stand-in is, but the Antai are these barbarians that sacked Rhodius. They're the Ostrogoths, and the king, which I'm assuming is supposed to be King Theodoric, has died, and our protagonist, Crispin, is an apprentice mosaicist or an associate mosaicist creating mosaic for Theodoric's. It's not Theodoric, but I don't know his real name. I don't know his book name. His like burial chapel or burial chamber, tomb, whatever it is. And so this book deals a lot with that concept of East versus West, and like the old versus the new, or I guess the East is the new versus the old, because the Antai are, they're a Germanic people that conquered the Rhodian Empire, Rome, but you've also got these other like Gallic / Germanic tribes that are in the region, and this book deals a lot with the old way of doing things versus the new way of doing things. You have the old religions of the pagans on the continent, the Germanic and the Gallic people and their pagan rituals and their pagan gods, and the Zubin, which is the bison of the dark bison of the forest. Even though they have taken on the mantle, the cost of vestments of Jaddism, which is the church basically only, and so even within that, there's still a conflict between the West and the East, because the West has embraced, Helatikos, which is the sun, the chariot pulls the sun across the sky in the chariot. This is basically Arian Christianity, where it considers Jesus as separate from God, which is anti-Trinitarian. So that's basically where we are. In the West, it is they have Helaticos on their in their teachings and in their art, and over in the East, it is absolutely dame verboten and considered heresy. It's even considered heresy in the West, but the Western Patriarch and the Eastern Patriarch, they're not the exact. It's there's just a schism between the West branch of the Jadian Church and the Eastern branch of the Jadian Church, and so the conceit of this book is that Emperor Valerius II over in Sarantium is rebuilding the great sanctuary to Holy Jad, and he needs a Rhodian mosaicist because, again, the Romans are the forerunners of them, and he needs a Rhodian mosaicist to go over to Sarantium and assist in putting mosaics on the dome of the holy sanctuary. Now, it is not it's not subtle, and it doesn't have to be, because the title Sailing to Sarantium means a number of things, and it means a number of things to a number of our different characters. Sailing to Sarantium means your life is on the cusp of change, poised for emergent greatness, brilliance, fortune, or else at the very precipice of a final and absolute fall as you meet something too vast for your capacity. Another character refers to sailing to Sarantium as when a man threw himself at an obvious and extreme hazard, risking all, changing everything one way or another, like a desperate gambler at dice, putting his whole stake on the table. So sailing to Sarantium it's just going to represent some kind of huge change in your life, either perched on the edge of greatness or perched on the precipice of disaster, or something in your life is going to change for good or for ill, either for great good or you've wagered everything and it's going to come up snake eyes, and that is central to our main characters. Crispin is consumed by grief and consumed with not living life because of plague. Plague is not something anyone can defend against, and the plague took 2 years ago. The plague took his wife and his daughters. This is all in the first chapter. Calm down. His wife and his daughters, and that's not even in the book. It's backstory. And he does not live life anymore. He has walls around everything. There is nothing. He's Barbossa from Pirates of the Caribbean, where food turns to ash in our mouths. And he's utterly anhedonic. He has his work, to freaking quote Frank Wildhorn and the Jekyll and Hyde conceptual soundtrack. He has his work and nothing more. So anyway, our other characters are the same way. They're searching for something, some kind of change in their life, some kind of catalyst. Vargos, the manservant at the imperial post houses that serves as a bodyguard. He can't return. He is the Iceni, so he's one of the Gallic tribesmen. He can't return to his home village because of something that happened there, and he just kind of rents himself out as the tough for people traveling the imperial roads until he meets Crispin and becomes his man. And then we have Cassia, a prostitute at one of these roadside outpostings, inns, who also cannot return to her people, having been sold into slavery after the plague wiped out all the men and the harvest. And so she was sold into slavery by her family, and so she is also longing for some kind of change because she's about to be sacrificed to a pagan ritual that happens every year. And so you have these three people that are kind of longing for something more in various states of being aware of that. And that's really, as they go on their journey to Sarantium, we see what they're risking, what precipices they're on the edge of, if it's going to be greatness, and we still don't know. This is the first of a duology, so we only have some of the answers there. Now, one thing I do want to say before I continue on is, reading this, I was struck by how similar this book reads to a KJ Parker book. And I know, like a bunch of you just close the video, and that's fine. I refuse to believe that KJ Parker did not read the Sarantine Mosaic duology before he started writing his KJ Parker, because this was written in the 90s, and Parker's first book was in the 2000s, so Guy Gavriel Kay did it first. But it is so incredibly similar. Especially like for the first like section, I had to keep reminding myself. Like the prologue is directly out of a Parker novel. Any part that deals with the Imperial Courier Teleticus, including what happens, this like little episode, as they would call it in Greek theater, that seems to have nothing to do with anything about what happens to Teleticus in his life. That's right out of a Parker novel. Now, if you've read one of the first-person novels, I'm not talking about those. The first-person novels don't lend themselves to these little asides and kind of this vaguely humorous yet cynical way of writing, describing like big events that's just kind of removed and narratively mocking the events that are happening. But his third person works. This is straight out of something from the Engineer trilogy, or the Hammer, or the Folding Knife, or the Company, or Sharps has a good one there. Not just in the vaguely Byzantine Parker's characters are much more vaguely Byzantine than are these, which are obviously Byzantine, but also an artist or a craftsman that is at the center. That is standard Parker. In Folding Knife, it's a banker. In the Hammer, it's a manufacturist. In Savages, it's a general and more manufacturists. In the Company, it's farmers. And in this, it's a mosaicist, and we learn ins and outs and the very minute details about being a mosaicist that tells you that Guy Gavriel Kay has 100% done his research. He knows all about this. That's one of my favorite things about Parker novels, is when he stops the narrative to just like tell us all about how arrows are made and fletched, how you build a foundry, and things like that. And so Crispin is a Parker, or I guess I should say that Basso and Ziani are Guy Gavriel Kay protagonists that Parker has used. It's just bizarre how similar it is. The difference is that Parker has a very cynical and like kind of nihilistic view of humanity. So when these bad things are happening, we just take it as this is human nature, and we should not expect anything else. And yes, there is beauty, but it's going to be ruined and marred by the human involvement in this. And Parker writes very beautiful passages, just like Kay here. But the difference while reading Sailing to Sarantium with me that helped me separate it in my head is the fact that Guy Gavriel Kay keeps Sarantium very I don't want to say inspirational, but aspirational maybe. All of his discussion about beauty and art is all very hopeful about new beginnings. And even when horrible things are happening, it feels less. Guy Gavriel Kay is a less nihilistic writer than is KJ Parker. But I had to say it because I keep looking at my notes and I keep avoiding saying it, and I have to say it. It just felt so much like a KJ Parker novel in many sections. Tigana did not feel that way. This one definitely does, largely because of the setting. We have an artisan protagonist. These weird asides, like with Pronobius Teleticus. Parker like has cribbed from Guy Gavriel Kay here. And another part, a part of that is because I love the fact that because Crispin is an artisan and a mosaicist, he thinks in terms of mosaic. And that's what I love about Parker's heroes, is that Basso thinks in economic terms. He thinks in banking terms. Ziani thinks in engineering terms. Everything is a cog in the big machine that Ziani has built to do whatever nonsense Ziani's gonna do. So everything Crispin sees, he imagines what the light would look like playing off the glass tiles, what colors he would use to fashion the color of someone's eyes, or the dark forest or the fog, how he would do it in tiles, how he would angle the tiles, what light he would need to best bring that to life. And I love little details like that, because it makes me buy into the fact that I'm supposed to be following someone whose main trait is the fact that he puts little tiny glass tiles called tesserae in a pattern to make a picture. So we've got our protagonist and our ancillary or our deuteragonists and tritagonists, and they're sailing to Sarantium. They're searching for kind of freedom from their life, and there is some event along the road to Sarantium that they kind of face a rebirth, if you will, where they feel like they can break free of the lives they've been living and can start new ones in Sarantium. But no one has any idea what is waiting for them in Sarantium. And this book is almost 600 pages, and I finished it. There is not a lot that has happened. There's definitely a second part to this. But there is so much to be said about the intersections of power and religion and art and the past and the present. And it is, Guy Gavriel Kay is such a beautiful writer. He was a beautiful writer in Tagana. He's a beautiful writer here. And some of the things that he talks about in relation to those three things, it just blew me away. So Kay has a lot to say about power over one's life, power over one's people, power over one's craft. And he also talks about the power of art to move the soul, to influence, to persuade. We've seen this all throughout history, art being used for political purposes or propaganda or just to awaken the spirit. And Kay talks about this idea that power is always co-opted by a greater power that wants to harness it and use it and profit from it. So this idea that if you display even a tiny amount of power, that's like a beacon in the night, and a larger power is going to come and take it from you and point it toward its enemies or whatever it needs to do to profit from that. That power cannot exist. That small amounts of power cannot exist on their own without being swallowed up by greater powers. We see the power of art and its ability to capture moments or give form to the divine. Especially concerning mosaics. Since Crispin is our mosaicist, we see mosaics that knock people to their knees because the divine images that they portray have such a profound effect on our person. And I have seen this in like IRL. This has never happened to me, but when we went to Rome 4 years ago, and I took a bunch of students, we went to the Vatican and St. Peter's Basilica, where the Pietà is, Michelangelo's Pietà, which is a statue that is now behind a bunch of stuff because psychos with hammers try to hit it. We walked into, and if you've ever been to St. Peter's Basilica, like, just the majesty of it. But the Pietà is not an enormous statue. It is a like a life size, like it's a normal size white marble statue of Mary and Jesus after he has been taken down off the cross. And my wife went over to where you could look at it, saw it, and just started to weep. The statue was just sitting there. Michelangelo's not there to talk about it. No one was making any kind of fanfare about it. It was just there. You can look at it. And my wife started to cry. And I was moved by that. I have never been moved by like physical art like that. I mean, I've been moved by obviously like books and other media, but like I've never seen like a statue or a mosaic that has profoundly affected me the way the Pietà did my wife. And so when I'm reading this, that what Kay's talking about, I know from firsthand experience or having seen it that he channels that really well and just very easily shows you the power of art to evoke emotion and to like penetrate the soul, especially when it comes to images of the divine. And here again we see the East and the West. In the West, Jad is depicted as a young, lithe, handsome, blonde-headed deity. But in the East, he's harder and has worry lines and anxiety lines, and his brow is furrowed fiercely, and he's got a big old beard. What's that from? Or is it great bushy beard? Is that right? Is that it? And so even then, in the iconography, we've got differences between the East and the West, the Old and the New, and how, he's supposed to be portrayed. But with the mosaics especially, we see how the mosaics particularly can intersect with the holy because of the way that light is used, because of these glass tesserae. Mosaicist, just like Jad, the holy, who controls light, the mosaicist can harness some of the divine by the different ways that he can harness and channel light, point light in certain ways, see the way light comes through this tile at this time of night, and they can bend it to their will, co-opting some of that divinity for themselves as they're creating these gorgeous and moving and often disturbing works of art. Kay here talks about how the idea that art and government are subsidiary to war, that war is where the lasting legacy is left. Just look at the Rhodian Empire, which is burned and torched, and Rhodius itself sacked and razed basically to the ground by the Anti. And how people, I mean, there are exceptions. You do have very, very exceptional artists, like, you have the Renaissance painters and sculptors that we remember really well, but for mosaicists especially, like, no one remembers the mosaicists that laid, for example, the Alexander the Great battle with Darius III at Issus, at Pompeii. No one knows who laid that mosaic, but this idea that the art that you see everywhere, other than the huge, really famous landmark pieces, people do not remember them, and yet people remember the generals, the ones who, the battles where great battles were won, all the death that had to happen. And there's even this idea that art owes itself to the bloodthirsty nature of war, that without soldiers and without war, art could not exist, and certainly not persist. The example given is look at Rhodius, where because they could not defend against the Anti, it was burned, and so all of those gorgeous mosaics and works of art were destroyed, shattered, torn to the ground. Mosaics are burned, where most of the tiles are just ashen black now. This idea that without war, without soldiers, without generals, without that violence, there cannot be or certainly not last, these great works of art. And that, here again, we have that intersection of art and violence, and religion and violence. They cut off hands and cut the nose or execute heretics. Valerius too wants to build this huge, the largest sanctuary to Jad anywhere in the world, and yet is also about to embark on a bloody conquest of the West to reunite Rhodius and Sarantium again in order to establish that legacy. So you have these people who want these great works of beauty, but also there's just so much violence surrounding a lot of it. He talks about art and the artist, about how for art to truly move someone's soul, to excite, to pull something out of other humans, it cannot just be a technical mastercraft. The artist's desire and feeling and passion has to be poured into it, and we think of that as kind of a given. But I think there's also a lot, especially in our current culture, that glorifies technical proficiency rather than ideas and emotion and passion behind things. And it shouldn't necessarily be that way. There is a lot to admire in technical mastercraft and technical proficiency, but there is the ineffable quality of works of art that come from the craftsman's soul imparting a piece of that into his artwork, that I think sometimes gets lost. That the perfect artist and perfect art can only really come from the divine, because a perfect artist could withdraw himself and only focus on the art and the internal, imparting to the external. But that because we are human, all art is inherently imperfect, because we cannot just sit on our scaffold above above the fray, ignoring everything, ignoring the politics, ignoring our relationships with others, our loves, our hates, our fears, our envies. Instead, the artist has to take all of that into some unasked for casserole of life and somehow produce something remarkable. So there's also a ton about iconography, and again, that's the East-West, the old and the new, just how something like a dolphin can mean two different things, both of which are heretical to this third party, or it could just be, porpoises in the ocean or whatever. And that debate even extends on whether or not the holy Jad should even be depicted in iconography. There are still debates today among Christians about the commandment that says, "Thou shalt not make any graven images," on whether or not that precludes depictions of God and Jesus and the divine. I've met some people who don't think that's okay, and I've met people who do think that's okay. And I normally don't like big philosophical treatises about art, normally. But the world that Sarantium exists in, and the way it's written, and my predilection for Parker, because another thing that Parker explores all the time that Kay explores here is what is the difference between the civilized and the savage. Is civilization just defined by the person with the best military tactics, like the best army, and they beat the savages, therefore they're the savages? Or is civilization defined by its great works of beauty, its great works of art? Can the savage not produce that? And that is the purview solely of the civilized man. So my wife just came in, and so rather than you heard my story about her and the Pietà, I'm just gonna have her come and tell you about her experience with the Pietà.
Okay, so this might sound a little silly, but when we went to the Vatican, it did not occur to me that I was going to see the Pietà. Like, I didn't make the connection that that's where it was. So part of the impact was just, I think, the surprise of it and getting to see it in real life rather than just in my art history textbook from high school. I've always kind of loved the Pietà because how do you make stone look like fabric? It's just incredible. But yes, getting to see it in person was very moving for me for multiple reasons. One, just to be able to see such an incredible work of art in real life right in front of me. It's just such a blessing and a privilege, and just really cool. And then two, it's just such an emotional piece to see, the body just draped across the mother, and to think about a mother should be holding a baby, or if you're holding your son, he should be living. And just to remember, in our faith, this is something very meaningful and impactful and very real. So just thinking about a mother's grief too, and how humanizing that makes it all. It was just very humbling and beautiful and powerful.
And so, yes. So a lot about art, a lot about power, a lot about religion. There's the old, the new, the half world that kind of lurks under. It's kind of like the world of magic. So that's where the fantasy part comes in. Kay says a lot about these little small choices that kind of ripple out and affect empires. And as you see those small choices being made, like, are they being guided by the divine? Are they being guided by something from the half world, like some kind of old spirit, or is it just coincidence? So I like that. The one thing I did not enjoy is how often Kay goes to the well of, when he thought about it later, he realized what a big deal this was, or it would be a long time before he realized. Like, there's a whole lot of but it's not foreshadowing. It's just like, it's telling me that this person later realized what was happening was foreshadowing. There's a lot of that, and I found it so frequent as to be jarring for me. Finally, chariot racing. Guys, chariot racing's freaking awesome. If you've never watched the original Ben-Hur, not the crappy remake, but the original Ben-Hur, like someone died filming that chariot racing thing. We always think about gladiator fighting and how like dangerous gladiator fighting was. Most gladiators did not die. That is because you did not spend the cost and time training someone just to have them die immediately at the first time they lose. Like, imagine spending all this money training up the Spurs or the Knicks, and then whoever loses game 4, you die. The other team murders them. Like, what? But people died in chariot racing all the time. Super dangerous. And whenever there is some kind of like action or sporting event in books, it is hard to make that compelling. Guys, I couldn't breathe reading the chariot scene in this book. So well done. And I love that he shows the power of the, like, we have the emperor and the politics and the scheming and the, you know, the back and forth and the undercutting and the stabbing in the back kind of thing. But then you have the chariot racing, which is just a microcosm of that, because you have the Greens and the Blues, who were always the most popular factions, even in the Western Empire. They were always the most popular factions, but their raw power, like, as kind of like voting blocks. They're really like the political parties, and they have their own like political maneuvering. Like the Reds are subservient to the Greens, and the Whites are subservient to the Blues, and they've got their own like politicking and shanking. Like, you do not forgive chariot racing chariot races that raced with one team for a long time and then swapped over to the opposing team. It's like way worse. It's like if when Favre left the Packers, they murdered him instead of letting him go to the Vikings. So I love the chariot stuff. I love the stuff with the Reds and the Greens. How seriously and how like endemic to the everyday life it was. Like, it was a huge deal what faction you went to or you rooted for in the chariot racing. So I love that scene. All in all, I love this book. There's no one part of it that just makes me go wow, or like that I'm like, oh my gosh, this part. But the tale that is beginning, that I think that is going to be concluded in Lord of Emperors, I'm excited to see this as a whole picture, as a whole mosaic, if you will, rather than just this piece that feels a lot like setup. He even lampshades that in the book. It was like, oh, and he met all these people that would become important to his life, etc. So I'm eager to read the second book. I'm eager to talk about this with Philip and Evan and Kyle. Not having read a lot of GGK, we're not on those terms. Not having read a lot of Guy Gavriel Kay, I was very pleasantly surprised. I'm going to go back and read Tagana and make a review for that, because I never actually did that. I don't think. Do I have a Tagana review? Someone type it. Regardless, a beautiful book. I'm certain that the other three will have things to say that are more profound than what I had to say. But I loved it. I'm going to read more Guy Gavriel Kay. Let me know if you've read it, and do I have a smorgasbord waiting for me in Lord of Emperors. So hopefully this review wasn't terrible. It's going to take me, like I said, I gotta get back into the swing of things. But thank you guys for watching. If you watched how long, I don't know how flipping long this is, probably super long. Thank you guys for watching. That's it for me for today. As always, information about my Patreon and Discord is down in the description. The discussion will be, I think, on Philip Chase's channel on the 13th of June. I'll put a link down in the... No, I guess I won't. But it is in June 13th, so I'll share it whenever I get the link. It's not alive. Never mind. It's going to be pre-recorded. I'll share it when it's posted, so forget that date. That's all for me. I'll talk to you. No! I'll see you next time, guys.